Welcome to the first ever podcast episode of Purpose on Purpose, Overcoming Adversity and Creating Resiliency. I'm your host, along with Kristie Griess. My name is Dario Herrera, and we're going to really be diving into the idea of resiliency and how every opportunity in our life that presents a challenge or seemingly at some point is overcomable or unovercomable, I should say, is really a path to resiliency, a path to being challenged and growing in a way that maybe we didn't think was possible to grow into and lean into. So Kristie and I have been friends and colleagues now for over 2 years. We'll get into our story about how we met on probably a later episode. But today I just want to kind of jump right into this. Kristie, tell me what Purpose on Purpose means to you.
Well, thank you for leading us today, and I'm so excited about our first podcast, Purpose on Purpose. When we were really thinking about what the name should be, this came up because I think both of you and I are really seeking to have a purpose-filled life. And for me, that means that we were created as living beings by purpose, on purpose. So we have a purpose for being here on this earth. I think everybody individually is learning what that is. And we were created on purpose by God. And so I think it's just a really interesting topic. And there are so many different individuals that I've come across in my just walk on earth that seem to have found their purpose and live on purpose and really live with an intentionality for serving a higher good or that purpose. And so it's what came up for us to speak on.
Yeah, and I struggled with that, honestly. You know, when I was younger, I got into politics at an early age. You know, I was basically 22 when I ran for office, and I thought that was my life's purpose. And I experienced some incredibly quick success. I ascended very quickly. And then I'll get into this a little bit more, had a meteoric downfall. And when I was out of politics, I struggled with what my purpose was. Here I was, someone who had been talked about at someday being a governor or a United States senator. I got elected to the state assembly at a young age and a county commissioner, chairman of the county commission. And that identity, all of a sudden, and it was a self-imposed stripping of it, a self-sabotage at a miraculous level to really derail me from what I thought was my life's purpose. And I was, grasping. I remember waking up the day after I lost my election for Congress and wondering and crying in bed, with this deep depression, wondering, okay, if I'm not chairman of the county commission, if I'm not a candidate for Congress, if I'm not in public life, like, who am I?
Exactly.
Right? What am I going to do? What's my purpose? And that was 20 years ago. And I'm still working on, finding my purpose. And some days I feel really aligned to it and really close to it, especially when I'm doing the social good work that I do, part of it with Mickey's Miracles and other, service-oriented projects. And some days I feel kind of disconnected from that. And I still have that question, like, what my purpose is. So for me, Purpose on Purpose represents the journey, right? And understanding that and giving ourselves permission to have that be malleable, right? And have that, our purpose is going to be different as we evolve through life. I'm finding a lot of great purpose now in being a father, right? And reconnecting to my youngest son, who I haven't always had the strongest connection with, to be candid, really guiding my oldest son as he embarks on his journey towards manhood as, he's about to turn 20. And then certainly being, the kind of man that would be happy for my daughter to date. She's 17 now, and she's going to be a senior in high school next year, right? So I'm finding a ton of purpose in that and being worthy of being a good partner, to someone I recently got engaged. And,
Yes.
And I'm finding a lot of purpose in perfecting myself as a partner, and to serve, my children, serve my life partner and my friend. And, And I'd love to hear kind of your evolution too, because, I know you as a mom, right? And I know you as a fierce advocate that, created Mickey's Miracles, for those of you who don't know, a pediatric epilepsy organization that's a global that helps families get to level 4 pediatric epilepsy centers with urgency to help children survive really and enjoy a quality of life that they may not otherwise get to enjoy, but for Mickey's Miracles advocacy. So tell me a little bit about that. What's been kind of your journey for finding purpose?
Well, I just want to follow up on what you're saying. I think overall what I've learned is that purpose is dynamic, not static. So as we evolve and grow and get to these different levels of our evolution, God, and from my perspective, God reveals a new purpose. So for instance, Mickey's Miracles that you've spoken to is one aspect of me. And really, that was a journey of almost losing my 3-month-old daughter, started seizing, and we went on this journey to save her life. And thankfully, we got to the right hospital and the right doctor, and they did brain surgery to save her life and stop her from seizing. And so I found purpose in that journey. And really, it was about me coming home and saying, God used me. And the next thing I knew, all these families started coming to me. And so I found a mission in helping other families and taking a tragic experience that I had and using it for good. And that was a really important part of my life. But now I've been doing this for about 7. Mickey will be seizure free now. It's been 8 years. She's 9 years old. And I'm finding God's putting new passions in my life and new opportunities to serve even beyond pediatric epilepsy, which is amazing. And I spent a lot of time in prayer saying, God, use me. Where do you want me? I want to be in your will. And when I look back on my life, there's been significant events that have shaped me. So specifically, from a very young age, I was bullied. I mean, I recall being bullied probably starting in 3rd grade. And it was just a very, very traumatic experience. It never seemed to stop. We moved and I got bullied again to the point where I was jumped in a locker room in 8th grade. And I fought to defend myself. And you may not think that I look tough, but I'm pretty strong. And then
listen, I was pretty tough.
Don't throw a deodorant bottle at me in a locker room and jump me and think I'm not going to stand up for myself and defend myself. And then I got detention. I got Saturday school for defending myself. I thought my life, I was in danger. And so the mixed messages that went on, and really that little girl who was bullied, I still carry her with me today. And I think that because that happened to me, I am so loyal, and I'm a defender of those. And you'll see this in my advocacy work with pediatric epilepsy and rare diseases. I defend the vulnerable because I was there and I know what that feels like. Other things that happened to me in my life, in particular, losing my father and 3 months of cancer comes up for me, and really feeling that sense of losing somebody and not having control. And then again, that happened to me with Michaela, and then my parents' divorce. That taught me a lot about relationships and how you have to fight for them, and how you have to know who you are going into a relationship, and you don't stop fighting. So there's been lots of different things that have happened to me that I think have taught me lessons on my purpose and why I'm here. And I think the most important thing is that it's not about us, that we're here on this planet to learn and to grow, but we're here to serve others and to take the difficult experiences that have come, our way, and to learn from them, grow from them, and then pass those lessons on. Hence why we're here doing Purpose on Purpose.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think I'd love to kind of unpack a little bit, because that's a lot, right? And
I know, I just kind of dropped a couple bombs.
No, I love it. I know something about you that I hadn't heard before. I never would have thought that you were someone who was subject to being bullied. You're so strong, and not that people who are bullied aren't strong. Obviously, different adversities shape us in different ways. but I never would have guessed that. So it's incredible. We've known each other for quite some time. We've become pretty close, in our work with Mickey's Miracles and as friends and partners. And, it's really interesting to get that perspective. But kind of there was two things underlying, what you said. One is, and I heard this very clearly, points of adversity, right? Whether it was losing your father or having to figure out, make sense of relationships as your parents, divorced, or, having to make sense of how you had this beautiful little girl that you couldn't figure out what was wrong with, and having that fear and wanting to control, but knowing that you had to have faith and let go at the same time.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess the question I want to ask is, how did you deal with that adversity? How did you get through it? I know faith is an important part of it, of course, but I kind of want to get underneath that a little bit and into, what kept you moving,
I think we all inherently have something about our personalities that make you the way you are. And I've always just naturally been an achiever, a box checker.
Yeah.
I've learned, lately that it's important to do a heart check than a box check. And that's really digging into, where is this coming from, as opposed to being perfect.
That's a tweetable moment, by the way. Heart check, not lip check. I love that. That's amazing.
And as my, one of my favorite authors, Renee Brown says, I'm a recovering perfectionist, and I think all of that kind of stem from that early age, the trauma from being incessantly bullied for so many years. And I know what fear feels like when you're scared to walk the halls because girls are going to come put gum in your hair. And I've had some really close relationships. I think one thing is having your tribe around you. Mm-hmm. My number one fan was always my mom. So she always came from the perspective, like, you handle what you need to handle. And when you can't handle it, you come to me. And so I think that I remember that time I handled it. And then when I got Saturday school for defending myself, my mom was definitely at the principal's office going, what kind of message are you sending her for this to happen? And so I remember I've always had some like really good friends. Mm-hmm. It may have been one at the time, but still to this day, I mean, I have some, it's never been this big, huge circle, but one or two like homies that just are there for you, and you can share your fears and your concerns, and that you're loved by them no matter what. And they, in particular, I have three friends that are in my mind from childhood, Maya, Rebecca, and Lisa, who just love me for who I was. They saw that I was a child of God. They saw the goodness in me, and they believed in me, even when all this stuff was happening. So I think having that, and then just this internal desire that did probably fuel my perfectionism in life, that like, I'm just not accepted. You just don't know me. So I'm going to be better. I'm going to strive so hard to be perfect. And then they'll like me. Then they'll accept me. Yeah. And then I'll be good enough. And now I know through my work and my prayers and my time with God that I don't need to do anything to earn that, anybody's, validation. God loves me just the way I am, the way he created me. And I don't have to do good deeds to earn that. And I really, that is one message that it feels so important, because whether you're 12 years old or you're 52, I think that that's something that if you don't deal with that not good enough part, there'll always be this search for, if I do this, if I do that, then I'll be enough. So having that support system, even though it was small, it was like my mom and a couple good friends, that carries you through some of the deepest, darkest times. I mean, I'll remember, my dad dying and my friend Rich coming over to my house, and he just held me and he didn't say anything. He just was there for me. And I think the deeper and the more difficult the situation, the more you just want your friends in your life not to say anything, but just be there, whether for as long as it takes, you just be there and you don't say anything and you just listen and you support. And I've had some people do that in my life, and that's really gotten me through. Now I'm so blessed to have a life partner, Gabe, who is just my rock. And, dolled up, not dolled up, yoga pants, ugly to your face, like it doesn't matter. He just holds me high, and there's the one side where he holds me to my greatest potential, but in the other side he just accepts me where I'm at. And I think the more as life has gone on, I've learned more about who Kristie is, and I've also developed a closer relationship to God, and I know my truth now. So nothing anybody says, even though I'm sure, as you've seen, when there's going to be critics out there, and the more you put yourself out there in the limelight, in the arena, you're going to be attacked, and it really should be. There should be an acceptance and a knowing when you know yourself that even though it still hurts, you can have that moment, and then you can recognize, no, this isn't about me. This is somebody else's opinion about me, and something about me is causing a reaction in them. I just want my life's message and the things that I've learned to be a gift for others. And whoever that it resonates with, please take it. If it doesn't, that's okay too.
All right. There's two things that I want to unpack there. One is, and I want to touch upon this because I think it's incredibly important, and I want all our listeners to hear this very clearly. Like, we don't have to do anything extraordinary to be worthy.
Exactly.
Like, being worthy, being valuable is a birthright. And I think I'm paraphrasing Renee Brown, but you touched upon that in your answer, and that's important, and it's something that I still struggle with. The idea of being worthy.
It's an everyday. It's an everyday, and I think another aspect to being purposeful is being aware. Just being aware of these moments and taking a step back. You become a cloud, and you look down on yourself, and you're okay. What? No, this is a lie that I've told myself for years and years and years, and it's a lie. It's not my truth. I'm a child of God. I am worthy. I am whole. And like you said, it's an act of just the fact that we're here on this planet is an act of love, that God loved us that much that, he brought us here on this planet. And so I think it's something that I struggle with too. I don't think it's about, I don't think, like you said, the idea in my head is always like, oh, there's this end result that I'm going to get. But the reality is it's just a journey. And I think we're a cup, and the more we fill it up with, goodness, then we're going to have more goodness to overflow and to give to others. But we're never going to get it perfect. We're human. We're just.
Did you say we're never going to get it perfect? The perfectionist said we're never going to get it perfect. Well, that's a big breakthrough right now. Like that's a seminal moment in the time I've known you. But the second thing I want to really focus on, because to me, my personal interpretation of resiliency is that there is a formula. And I think it's formulaic for all of us. That formula might be different.
Yeah.
It had different parts. But one of the things I heard from you was part of how you were able to overcome adversity and develop some resiliency in very seminal moments of your life is having a tribe, right? Having a tribe that, saw you for who you were, right? Were attracted to the authentic you, right? Knew you were worthy, believed in you, supported you no matter what, kind of unconditionally, regardless of whether you were the popular growth score or not, or being bullied or not, and I see that, in your relationship with Gabe, I see that extraordinary support you guys have for one another. And I know that him being part of your her permanent tribe has supported you through the stuff you dealt with Mickey, and other challenges you've dealt with. Mickey's one of the difficult things you've had to deal with, and I think it's easy for people to look at you and, you're attractive, you're successful, you have a beautiful marriage, you're a great mom, you've created this global nonprofit, to think, oh, everything's been, just fine.
And that's why we're here, to demyth all of that.
and I think really, for me, having people understand that, resiliency is within all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that when stuff comes up, because stuff is going to come up, for me, a lot of the stuff that came up as a young person for me, it was forced on me, right? I had no control over it, right? My stepfather putting a gun on my head when I was 14 and forcing me to leave the house at gunpoint because he was coked up and drunk and jealous of my relationship with my mom. And he had his own issues, right? Obviously, to do that to a 14-year-old, right? So that's something I didn't have control over. My dad leaving when I was 2 and starting multiple families after us and never once inquiring about us, only for me to find him, when I was 17, serving a 20-year term in state prison for drug trafficking.
Wow.
And
you told me the story, and I think that's the other thing, is finding people that are so unlike you and have different backgrounds and different upbringings. I've been so attracted to being friends with you because we come from such a different past. Can you tell us a little bit more about what it was like growing up for you?
Okay, I wasn't ready for that question. Listen, there were moments of joy, lots of moments of joy, playing baseball.
You grew up in Miami, right?
Grew up in Miami. My dad left when I was 2. And we were kind of alone, my mom, my sisters, and I, for a couple of years. My mom had the support of her mom, my grandmother, Dulce, who was this tiny woman, maybe 5'1", maybe not even 5'1", who maybe weighed 95 pounds, but had the soul of a giant and the heart of a god, really, and an incredible work ethic. And if you crossed her, the heaviest hands, you could ever feel. But there's a lot of moments of joy, and there's a lot of moments of feeling unsafe, and feeling alone and uncared for. I remember one time I was doing a therapy session, and it was a hypnosis part, and she asked me to kind of envision what my father was like, and literally it was me alone in the middle of this vast space, calling for help. Calling for my mom, calling for my dad, calling for help, and no one answering. So I had moments of that, obviously, in my childhood, and I had moments of, playing baseball and having my mom in the stands, and having a sister that I lived with, in high school. I mean, she and I were living in high school together, and I wasn't alone. I mean, for all intents and purposes, we were abandoned by our mom. But she and I were there for each other, as was my older sister, and helping us get the place and checking on us, and a basketball coach that, cared a great deal about me. But I would say there were moments of joy and many moments of, being alone and scared and feeling abandoned, and wondering what I did, to be abandoned, and what I had done to earn, having my stepfather put a gun to my head at that age, and my mom staying with him, after that, to kind of let us fend for ourselves, but I looking back on my life, I think it was a huge source of accomplishment for me, meaning I used all of that to be driven. Like when I got to college, being told that I would never get to college by my high school counselor, I got a 4.0. I got really involved in campus organizations. I earned the honors program. I earned a full academic scholarship. I was political science student of the year. And that launched my political career, very early on. So that drove me, right? Like being abandoned, feeling like I wasn't enough, drove me to be enough.
Gabe says that to me all the time. He says, baby, you talk about your recovering perfectionism in a negative light all the time, but I see how it drove you, and he says served me so well in so many ways. I, in my mind, was like, I'm gonna be the best at this, and I'm gonna do some great things. And then I wasn't thinking this rationally, but there was this part of me that I probably did recognize was, oh, no, you don't. Like, I'm going to be everything that you say that I won't be. I know exactly how that feels. I think you utilize that and took that, all those pieces and parts, and it became this driving force. And I'm really attracted to people who do that. I mean, it doesn't matter what they are in life. I don't care. But people, I have found in my life that people have been through the most devastating, and we deal with this every day, seeing these families, but they don't live in victim. They have so much hope, and they work so hard, and they keep trying. And I've always appreciated that about you, that you came from, difficult, upbringing. Although at the same time, I too look back, and we have a tendency, I think, to think about the not so good things, but I think it's so important that you can recognize the good stuff too, because I think stuff that can be traumatic, I have found I put it in a box, and you just label that box. But I think it's important to go and unpack it and really acknowledge the good things, because that shapes you. Both of them shape you.
Yeah, I mean, like, I had a stepfather that, cared for me a ton, and was the closest thing to a father that I ever had. That relationship, I think lasted 5 years, before there were many other men who came through my life, not all good guys. But, he gave me the earliest example of what a father was like. I had a friend ask me the other day, like, you didn't have a father. Like, how are you a dad to your kids? Like, who did you model? Because he said, I always had a great example. Mom, dad. My dad was a great man. He was very present. He was supportive. He was calm. He taught me how to be a dad. Like, how did you learn that? And I learned it kind of on my own a little bit. But then kind of reflecting in this conversation, Elio, which was my stepdad, really gave me the first glimpse of how to model that, right? And I've had, friends throughout my life who've also helped me model that. So it hasn't been a solo journey, but what was interesting for me was I went through all that stuff, and it motivated me, and it served to propel me, and to, give me a tremendous work ethic, and to, like, be bold, right? Running for office when I was 22, right?
Unbelievable.
A Hispanic kid, in a mostly white, and in some cases, I know this is not politically correct, but redneck district, and a lot of folks didn't give me a chance in heck to win, and I won convincingly, because I worked my butt off, and I learned the issues. I went door to door. I did everything that was necessary to learn, how to win that election. And then obviously I became a county commissioner, and then I started feeling like a fraud, right? I started feeling like, how did a kid with my background accomplish this? Like, I'm not qualified to be here. And I hadn't dealt with all that negative stuff that I had put in a box, like you said, all of a sudden started kind of creeping up. I hadn't done the work, and I didn't have the emotional maturity. I didn't have the awareness of, wow, I really did need my dad's love. Oh, wow, like, my mom leaving me when I was 15 did change the trajectory of my life, and I hadn't dealt with that. I pushed that away and used accomplishment and drive and having a 4.0 and graduating summa cum laude and being in the honors program and all my community involvement to mask all of that. I didn't deal with it, right? So it started to surface and became kind of a path to self-destruction for me. Right.
So when you talk about, feeling like a fraud, like, just speak into that. Like, is it, because I've seen a lot of people who self-sabotage. I think we all do it in little bits and pieces. You just happen to hire the office that,
it was pretty public.
And so you have this fast trajectory in politics in Nevada, and they're speaking, they're saying that you're going to be, possibly the next, and the next governor, the first Hispanic governor. This feeling of being a fraud, is that something that you rationally are thinking at the time, or is it?
That's been, after hours and hours and hours of therapy.
So what is it how is that manifesting at that time?
It's manifesting in that I don't deserve to be here. And because I don't deserve to be here, I'm going to do something to not be here, and it becomes almost like a cry for help. Like, hey, this little boy, there's, beyond the polished guy with a expensive suit and bright tie and, the ability to give a speech, there's this little boy that's hurt, that needed, what he didn't get. And in my case, I was so yearning for acceptance and validation and love that I confused people who didn't have good intentions for me, like they really cared about me.
As love.
Well,
and ironically, it's interesting. I don't know what it feels like to go that fast, but Gabe did run for office, my husband. It's probably about 5 years ago. Yeah. And he didn't win. And so I can relate to what you're saying about the loss of your congressional run and how devastating it was. It was really difficult for Gabe and challenging to see my husband, who put his heart and soul in something and really wants to, do great things, not reach that goal, which was the first time he's ever not reached a goal he set, which I'm sure you can relate. And running for office, the experience is unlike anything I've been through. And it is a machine. And it is so amazing to me to see so many people who, you're going to all these crab feeds and doing all this, and they're patting you on the back, and they seem like your friend. And the minute you run for office, it's the opposite. And you're on the out, at least for our experience, we were running against the machine. So we were on the outs. And then the election's over, and then you're friends again. And then people who weren't, allies are then allies because of whatever. It was just such a surreal experience. And I just can't even imagine what it would have been like for you to have that much power and responsibility. They basically gave you the option, continue to law school or come run, right? And so you ran, you're in office. I can't imagine. Now I see why Gabe didn't win. And there's so much that we've learned in that interim and so much foundational growth that we have, because you have to have, for me, my experience is like our faith wasn't strong enough. You're going to go through really challenging times that you're going to probably share about, and you have to really know who you are and have integrity and have a backbone of knowing what is right and wrong and what you're going to do. And then there's a lot of areas where you have to negotiate and maybe see another person's point of view. So speak into what that was like to have that much power at such a young age, and having people come to you you're one of the guys, Dario, when you didn't have that at a young age.
Yeah, it's, wow, that's a lot there. Let me take that in a couple different parts. First, what it was like at 25, 26 to have that kind of power. It was intoxicating, honestly, and I learned this, after the fact, but I was doing stuff I shouldn't have been doing, took a bribe from a strip club owner, right? Even though I didn't have any intention of really helping him, I told myself it was okay because I could remain objective, which was just not accurate. You're taking money, which is illegal in the first place, and then then I was rationalizing it, but I was doing so many good things, and serving my constituents and passing important policy proposals and changing the way that flood control was funded so that, homeowners wouldn't be devastated every time there was a 100-year flood or rainstorm here in Las Vegas, which happened pretty frequently. Or creating a metropolitan police department substation in a high crime area in my neighborhood when they told me it couldn't be done, or creating a neighborhood park and recreation center when they told me no funding was available because
you start to justify in your own mind.
Yeah, it's not a conscious thing, but you're like, I'm doing so many good things that if I do this over here, it's okay. And that's basically called nullification, right? It's a criminal thinking error where you minimize the negative you're doing because you're doing so much good, when in reality is it's still wrong and it still lacks integrity. And in many ways, I did know better and didn't do better. And in some ways I didn't know better because I couldn't stop myself I didn't have, my moral compass wasn't strong enough to be able to have the resolve. And a lot of people don't know this, but when they first came to me, the strip club guys, they offered me, a pretty big chunk of money. And the first time they came to me, I said no. And the second time they came to me, I said no. And the third time they came to me, I said no. And the fourth time, I said yes. So I did know better. And then I let myself, not do better, and underlying all of that was, again, this kid who, was given a ton of responsibility, who could walk the walk, look the part, negotiate with, the most tenured and seasoned politicians in Nevada, raise money as good as, or if not better than most, in Nevada. But underlying that was this scar that I had, and this lack, and this feeling of not being enough for my mom's love or my dad's love, that I was crying for help all the time, and that's along what I'm saying. Like I still, it's not an excuse, right? I own those acts, right? I did know better. I didn't do better. And I was held accountable. I paid a huge price. I got sentenced to 50 months in federal prison, ended up serving 30 months in federal prison. And I had a lot of time to reflect, in that 8-by-8-foot cell with all my belongings in a 2-by-6-foot locker, right? A bunkie named Pops, who was a meth addict and had a couple teeth and, could snore like no other person, You
go from the top of the top.
Yeah.
To the bottom in a jail cell. And I remember us talking about this, and I remember you saying that you had a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Because you felt that at least now you were like, you felt, well, I shouldn't say what you said, but I just remember you telling me you had this relief when you were there.
Yeah, I had a peace about me because I could stop pretending, like talking about it now, part of me felt like I belonged there more than I did.
That's kind of what I was trying to get to say, but I didn't know how to say it.
In the political arena, like this is more kind of how I feel about me, and this is where I should be, because, what I did was wrong, right? And I got a chance to be held accountable, right? And I didn't continue to ascend and let that corruption I had within me, widen. That impact would have been even much more broad, impact the family, impact the community, impact the state, impact the country, So in many ways, I was held accountable early on, and was able to kind of have some reckoning, relatively young. My process took a long time. I got indicted multiple times, like superseding indictments, and it took a long time for the trial. And my stuff then when I was 24, 25, and I finally started serving in 2007.
Oh, wow. So there's a long time of wait.
I was a big fan. There was 5 years, 6 years.
That must be so much anxiety that comes with just.
Yeah, and I knew, right? And I knew I had done those things. And I lived in fear of someone finding out, so when I got, and I don't want to minimize, this is incredibly important because, my bad acts and me being sentenced, was a source of huge pain, for the mother of my kids. My absence from my kid's life was felt by them, and it makes me so sad to know that I wasn't there for them as their dad, because of what I did. On the other hand, knowing that I didn't have to pretend anymore, I didn't have to hide anymore, I could be held accountable for the things that I did. And going back to like the formula of resiliency, I think acceptance, ownership, acceptance is one of those things, one of those parts that are essential for resiliency. You talked about tribe. For me, accepting responsibility, owning what I did and coming to terms with what I did and not blaming anyone else, is
I
a huge part.
totally agree. I think that's a part of the formula. And I think we make daily acts, of things that we may say or do, or and it doesn't even have to be an act. It could just be Gabe calls it your come from, like where you're coming from. Because you could say something and come from a good place, or you could say the same thing and come from a not good place, or,
right.
Intentionality, I think is so important. But I agree. I think that the act of taking responsibility, accountability, every single day I do it from, just speaking to God, and, I'll think of something I said the day before or did. And I own that. And I ask for forgiveness every single day for the little things that I may say or do, and the things that I'm not even aware of that could hurt somebody, or just not be kind. And I really, this, but as your friend and partner, I think your story is a story of redemption. And I have so much admiration for the fact that you took responsibility for it, which is what the system, I think intends to do. It doesn't always go that way, but you took responsibility, you did your time. And then the story that is even more exciting is how you use that to drive the social good that you do now. And I thought when we sat down and we knew each other, for a while, and you were working on our social media for our nonprofit, and I just saw how you engaged. I remember going to Las Vegas, and you set up a whole bunch of meetings for the work that we're doing in legislation and for epilepsy and fundraising. And I just watched how you engaged with all these people that were pretty powerful in the Las Vegas area. And I remember sitting down with you, knowing your story, but of course, as we got to know each other, we got into more details about it. And I said, so tell me why, and I want you to share this with our audience, tell me why all those people have respect for you after the fact that you went to jail and did all these things. Why do they treat you that way? Because it was beyond being respectful. Like they admired you. I saw this kind of adoration, not in a negative way, but in a loving way. And I just was observing it, and I asked you why, and tell me what you said.
Well, I think I don't remember exactly what I said, but the feeling was that, I took ownership.
Exactly.
I accepted responsibility. There were other people who were involved in that case who, blamed others or, didn't accept responsibility. I made it a point to make it right with my kids, and God knows I need work there still. And at that time, needed, more work. But I took responsibility. I kept my head down. I came back and worked hard. I mean, my first job when I got out was selling printing.
That's what you told me.
And my transportation.
You're like, I had a bike. I got a bike.
Yeah, I had a bike, and I was riding bike, through, the strip basically in the middle of summer in Las Vegas, which can be warm, and having to, deal with people saying, "Oh, you're that guy that just got out of prison. No, we don't want to do business with you."
Yeah, and Dario Herrera is not that name is kind of different. It's not like Joe Smith.
It's not Joe Smith. Yeah, it's not a lot of names, but it came down to that. I came home. I worked diligently on repairing, the relationship with my children. I owned what I did. I paid off my fine. I paid my restitution. I was very diligent about all of that. And even with all of that, when they treated me that way, I still believed I didn't deserve it. Why? Because I still, had this struggle with not forgiving myself. Right. And I still knew that I had, like with my youngest son, the relationship isn't what it is with my older two children. I knew that I had to repair that, and hadn't taken the steps to really make that relationship what it should be as a father, and other things in my life, relationally, right? Not being authentic in my relationships, not being completely loyal in my relationships, struggling with the truth still. I still had some of those things that were a part of me. So even though they looked at me that way, I still had that underlying, oh, I don't deserve this.
And a reminder that
if only they knew, right? If only they knew.
This is, you're now about to be 48 because you're 1 month from Gabe's birthday, but exactly. So you're about to be 48, and you did your time at what age were you? 27 when you went in?
I was a little bit older than that. I was 33, I think.
Okay.
7, so 14 years ago. Yeah, 33.
Okay, so this has been a long time since then.
It's been a journey,
So the other thing you said was that I just helped people. So when you came out, you just went, not only did your time, not only paid your restitution and did all the things to make amends and start a whole new life, but you just started helping people.
Yeah.
Which is something that we connect on, just service. Underlying all this, when you run for office, I want to think that every politician is this way. I'm not saying that they are, but you have a desire to serve the greater good. And when we connected and we interviewed you to do the social media and marketing for Mickey's Miracles, we really connected that you had a son on the autism spectrum and you understood what it was like to have a special needs child. And I remember you being emotional about me telling you our story, and I've seen you in action being a social good entrepreneur and making it your mission to help organizations specifically that are on a mission greater than themselves. Mm-hmm. What do you feel, what is it that you feel the steps that you've taken since coming out of the system that you've taken to forgive yourself? Because my experience for you is that, we've had a couple instances where people have asked, and I get, again, super loyal and defensive of you, and you're just very zen about it. And like, this is the reality, of what happened, and you're at peace with it. And it seems that you have forgiven yourself and moved on and understand that maybe this was your story all along, maybe.
I think the level of peace depends. That's fluid and dynamic. Sometimes I'm much harder on myself about it. And other times I'm much more forgiving, towards myself about it. But the facts are the facts, right? I did the time. I did the crime. I did the time. I deserve to be held accountable. And when I came home, I didn't want that to be my final chapter. I wanted to be remembered. I want to be remembered, as a loving father. I want to be remembered as a faithful, loving, supportive husband. I want to be remembered as someone who, cares about others more than he cares about himself. I want to be remembered as a giver, not a taker. I want to be remembered as someone that is generous and kind and humble. The word humble in me hasn't been used, a lot, and I'm still working on that. It's still a struggle for me, even with all I've been through, the meteoric downfall, the criticisms, the failures, I still struggle with humility, and that comes from overcompensation. It doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from feeling like I have to do more and be more because, of that underlying lack feeling that I've had for most of my life. But what drives me is making life easier for someone else. There's a lot of power in that, and I think that's another part of that formula, right? We've talked about, having that tribe, that believes in you no matter what.
Well, and you've gone back and you speak to, go into the prison system and you speak on this and you enlighten those that are still serving on, that there's a bright side on the other side of being there.
Yeah, it's a speech called Stand Up, right? And Stand Up's an acronym. And S is stop telling yourself stories that no longer serve you. And T is trust that if you do the next right honest thing, everything's going to be okay. A is accept responsibility. N is never give up. D is drive forward. U is understand that no matter how much you change, there are going to be people out there who don't like you, don't think you've changed, still think you're the same guy, and you got
Yeah.
to be okay with that. You got to make peace with it. And the P is persevere, like every day, take a step every single day, and there's days where I've taken 10 steps back, right? And there's days where I've taken 100 steps forward, right? And keep moving that with resiliency, and it's going to be fun. I have to say, like, this has been very kind of enlightening for me about you, and
I'm so excited.
like I didn't expect to answer these questions, but I appreciate them because it makes me
Well,
check in.
I'm excited because I want people to understand and see who you really are, who I see every day.
Yeah.
And you are humble, and it's pride for you and perfectionism for me, buddy. So that's the P in pop. But
yeah,
I think we're both here to say and to show that we all have faults and we all have parts of ourselves that aren't pretty. And I think the important part is to see that, do the best you can to be aware of those parts of yourself and make a true effort to do the right thing every day that you can and find purpose every day of your life for greater good, for others. And I've just appreciated being your partner, as Mickey calls you. Hey, partner. She calls her partner. And the girl Mickey. It's just been awesome to be in partnership, and this podcast really came from your story, and I'm so inspired by your story, and I think others will be inspired too. And so I'm just really honored that we can do this, and that you've taken my request, and now we get to share with others. And you want to just speak really quickly on what it'll look like to come, as we move forward?
Yeah, I first of all, thank you. You've been incredibly gracious, and I appreciate your support and Gabe's support. I want to acknowledge him too. He's a great man, and
Griess
is really a great example to me about how good men live their lives. I admire him so much for that, and what's going to look like is going to be a conversation. It's going to be comfortable. It's going to be, in some ways, conflicting. It's going to be creative, and it's going to be real, right? It's going to be real, and we're going to have guests. That some guests have accomplished incredible things and have overcome huge adversity, and have done so through resilience to accomplish some great things. And we're going to talk to people who maybe haven't overcome that resilience, or that adversity. To accomplish what they're capable of. So it's going to be really what our audience wants it to be. And that's an invitation to say, like, please, leave your comments for us. Let us know what resonated with you, what didn't resonate. If you have a specific question, if you have a topic, if you have a specific guest you want us to reach out to, it's really important for this to be interactive. And this is here to serve you, our audience, right? And to, I'll share obviously part of my experience, and Kristie will share hers, and what we think is, are the necessary steps to develop resiliency as we overcome adversity. But ultimately, this is to serve you and to remind you that you have everything you need within you to overcome any challenge that's put in front of you. If we can only give you one message, one central takeaway from this podcast, it's that you have everything within you to overcome whatever challenge is put in front of you, whether it's a self-imposed challenge or a challenge that's been put in front of you by someone else. You are perfectly capable of overcoming that adversity, and through resiliency, achieving what you want to achieve. And with that, we welcome. Yeah, we appreciate you joining us. Please, again, leave your comments below. Kristie, thank you. And until next time, we'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.